Slow roller. Chapman. Barehand. Got it! What a play! Oh, look at him. Chapman.
What a play. Oh, let's first and foremost get that mic on, Dan. Shout out Dave Fleming at NBC Sports Bay Area. Can you hear yourself, Dan?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's going on, Dan Devone?
I'm on that bandwagon officially, man.
Woo!
Giants are going to the World Series.
Okay. We're starting out hot here at 9 a.m. It's Saturdays with Evan Giddings and Dan Devone on 95.7 The Game. Happy to have you. Happy to have apparently a group of kids that cannot do anything except for come back. Because for the first time in franchise history, Dan, the San Francisco Giants have wrapped up 3 consecutive wins in which they have been down by 4 runs. And shout out New Jersey Ken, whose Mets took a tough L yesterday.
Jersey Ken.
Well, he's new out here, so.
Jersey Ken.
Ken, what's going on? How we doing?
That's all I got. I mean, it just remains. We find different ways to lose now, and this is an all-time loss right here. But you got to give it to the Giants. They did what they had to do.
Well, the Giants are finding new ways to win, Dan.
He's a Mets guy, so
yes, he is.
Ladies and gentlemen, just understand where it is he's coming from.
Yeah,
he's
you
not
can tell by the tone
well today.
Yeah, there's a different tone on this side of the glass as opposed to that one. That one is one of despondence. Even on this side, Dan, I'm not the biggest rah-rah guy, but I got to say, a whole hell of a lot can change in a week. I don't know what you guys were talking about last Saturday, but that was during the midst of the Giants' 3-game sweep of the Rockies. They've now won 7 of 10. They've taken 3 in a row, all come from behind wins, first in Pittsburgh, extra innings, and then, of course, last night in Queens, Patrick Bailey's go-ahead slam, Matt Chapman's defensive play to win the game. I mean, where do you want to start? There was a whole hell of a lot.
Well, we could start with last week because while you were doing the two-step in the nation's capital, getting sideways.
Yes, I was.
So I was here.
Shout out Sam Adams.
And I will tell you exactly what it is that I said in the midst of that losing streak, as I often am. You know what? I need to officially change my name here to like 100% because it's not that... it's not like I'm 99% of the time right. It's like a full Hundy. Just call me Hundy.
Oh, my God.
I'm Hundy, the kid, and Jersey Ken. There you go. Book it. But I'm telling you, I said that, yes, they were losing, but I just felt confident. And I said, you look at this roster, and you can't tell me that Matt Chapman has suddenly forgot to hit overnight, or that, this pitching staff and all these players are Jorge Soler, that this isn't going to be a good baseball team. I said that this roster is too good. I felt all along at some point they would hit. I think the pitching has been intact right from the outset, and I'll maintain all along that I've strongly believed that this team will be in the postseason and in the hunt.
Well, they are. I mean, right now they're 500. And I know this isn't like a sexy take, and nor was it a sexy take before the season, Dan. I'm not sure how much we talked about it, but because of how many, typical slow starters this team has. I mean, Chapman's not somebody that generally hits great first half of the season. Blake Snell has always come into camp out of shape. He starts out seasons terribly, whether he's on the shelf or whether he's throwing. He gives up a lot of barrel baseballs. So this is a team that I felt like top heavy. Even Soler, to some extent, has had some slow starts when he's been healthy. This was a team that I felt like at this point, if they were 500, which they are stand today, May 25th, they are in great shape. Because this is a second-half team. It's finally a team that, along with a lot of these youthful players, Marco Luciano, again in the crosshairs last night in the 9th inning, but with a lot of young players, they're now beginning to actually form an identity. And though it's taken a couple of months, in my mind, if you're at that point, 55 games in, you're actually sitting pretty.
I'll tell you what happened to this baseball team is the injury to Jung-Hoo Lee. Now, you never want to see a player, especially with his potential, and especially when you're on the hook for $113 million like that of the San Francisco Giants, you don't want to lose a guy who's a potential star. And also, one of the few guys that had a little flair to him, I think that there was something that connective energy between him and the fan base was just beginning. There was a groundswell. It was just beginning to take off, so the timing was terrible. But what often happens in sports is that when a guy goes down, and it opens the floodgates and gives opportunities for kids. And maybe you expedite the kids and put them into positions a little bit sooner rather than later. I think Luis Matos is going to be a star. I love the composition of this team. Now you talk about the identity of, this looks like a baseball team, all right? They have got athletes. And I haven't been able to say that about the San Francisco Giants for a while now. This is a team that I'm so tired of looking at the Austin Slaters, the Mike Yastrzemskis, the Mitch Hanekers, these guys who go at 5'10", 5'11", and $175. And now you're rolling out Jorge Soler. Luis Matos could be a hybrid safety linebacker in the NFL. He looks like Talanoa Hufanga. You got athletes now on this baseball team. This, I am telling you right now, is a team that'll get into the postseason. And as we saw a year ago with Arizona or the Rangers, if you get hot for 3 weeks, you can go home with the title. Everybody should be excited about what it is you're witnessing right now.
They should be, because it comes down to winning games. And the way they've done it has been miraculous. It's been spectacular. And I'm curious how fans have gone from a week ago up until now in regards to the Giants. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone here with you on a Saturday morning, taking you up until noon. We got some basketball coming up, big playoff games, of course, the last 2 days, but one last night. I thought that was spectacular between Dallas and Minnesota. Also some 49ers OTA news to get into. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, apparently Brandon Ayuk wants to be a $30 million receiver. We got all that on the back end, but we're talking about the San Francisco Giants because right now they're the talk of the town, Dan, and apparently they're the talk of Queens. Shout out to Ken. So I just feel like right now what we've gone from is looking for a team that's in any way, shape, or form watchable to, I mean, I'll be locked in at 140. Like, I want to watch this team play because you might see something that apparently has not been done in franchise history, which is 3 straight comeback wins of 4 more runs.
It's ridiculous. And you're beginning to witness, look at, there's the confidence. Now you get down. It's palpable.
Yeah. You're not turning the game off.
Well, and the team recognizes that we're okay, man. We're fine. There's this baseball team. Rarely do I get behind or excited about a group of guys, but ever, are you with me? Do you recognize suddenly that the athleticism is jumping off the page? I love Marco Luciano. I know we're going to get into discussion about him.
Oh, we will.
I hope this guy sticks. He just can't play shortstop. But I hope they find a position for this guy. That build and that speed, and now he's getting a little patient at the plate. Play that guy. It's just you can't play shortstop. And as I mentioned, Evan and I will go back and forth on why that dude sucks as far as his defense is concerned and is a clear liability. But Elliot Ramos, Jorge Soler, again, Luis Matos, you've got some ball players on this team. You have some athletes. And that to go along with the pitching, which I think you can go pound for pound with just about anybody in the major leagues. Now, I know that's saying a lot. Now, that's being optimistic and assuming that, Snell becomes Snell and that Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb come off the DL to go along with what has been sort of a surprise out of Keaton Wynn. I know he's on the shelf right now, but, I mean, this is Jordan Hicks. My goodness, who would have thought? And maybe I need to see it over a longer period of time for a guy who's come out of the pen who's throwing nothing but gas, and he has been, one of the guys that they're hanging their hat on. This is a legitimate staff. The bullpen is good. And then to go along with these guys that nobody saw in the beginning of the year, that you can literally bank on these guys and these youngsters as potentially being the breakthrough team out of the National League this year. A lot to get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, look, right now they're in the thick of it. I mean, last year, even though they were in, the playoff hunt or the wild card hunt, I just didn't feel like that was a roster that stacked up to the other teams that they were competing against, not just in the division, but also around the rest of the NL. This year, Dan, and it's interesting watching the last, let's say, 10 games. They won 7 of them. The thing that does stand out to me is there are, visible strengths and some weaknesses, but there are visible strengths of this team. I think the starting staff, though Kyle Harrison got beat up a little bit yesterday, I think the starting staff is a very big strength of this team. And I think at full strength, it could be one of the best starting pitching staffs in the league. I still have my questions about the bullpen, but at full strength, you might have a guy like you mentioned, Keaton Wynn, when he's back off the shelf, be able to go to the bullpen, string that thing out a little bit more. Ryan Walker looks like a serviceable 8th-inning guy. Duvall has had, some trouble as of late, but he's also been pitching a lot. I think he threw for the 3rd time in his last 4 days last night against the Mets. So, Bob Melvin is still looking for some answers, but the lineup to me is what's most exciting about this team because it's finally starting to round into form. I think there's still some questions I have, say, about the leadoff spot. Luis Matos has been manning that after they were essentially holding tryouts over the weekend for Jung-Hoo Lee's position, but Matos is going to be the center fielder. That kid can go get it. And of the 3 young players on the position side of things, Matos, Ramos, along with Luciano. I won't throw Bailey in there because Bailey, to me, is more established, even though he is 25 years old. Luis Matos is the one that just is must watch to me, because he might not take the best route. He might not get the first step in the correct direction, but he can just go get it in center field. And that's something, the raw ability, the raw athleticism of this kid, whether he's at the plate or if he's in center field patrolling. I mean, I just got my eyes glued to him.
Got to get rid of that aqua blue mitt. We're not in the 5th grade anymore.
I love it.
But
I love it.
Other than that, he is for real. I'm glad you mentioned Luis Matos. Why don't we start there? This is exactly what I'm talking about. When have we seen an athlete like that of Luis Matos on the San Francisco Giants? I want to single out one play in particular, and that is one of their remarkable comebacks. And that was on Wednesday after they had given up the 4-run advantage the night before. Everybody felt they were emotionally checked out. Everybody was dogging the San Francisco Giants, and there they were down to their last strike, right? They're down 4 runs, down to their last strike. Luis Matos is battling, and Pittsburgh and their fans are anticipating a win. And Luis Matos hits one into center field, a clean single. And this dude gets a hustle double. I mean, you just don't see that. You just don't see a guy waiting for that center fielder to bobble the ball and then just boom, turn it on. Like, nobody has that sort of mentality playing with the San Francisco Giants in some time. Jorge Soler, when is the last time you've seen a San Francisco Giant where you said, all right, this dude can give me 3 runs with 1 swing of the bat? Bonds? I'm trying to think of, seriously, legitimately, one guy stands into the plate, you're like, all right, we can get a run back if this guy hangs. What if the pitcher makes a mistake in his kitchen? He's going deep. Jorge Soler, the Giants have been void of these sort of players, and now they have them. Luis Matos is a budding star in this league. And I think that when you think about that youth and you think about the athleticism, we have not seen that in San Francisco Giant uniforms in some time. And to me, that is the base of all of this sort of excitement right now.
Yeah, I agree. I could be missing a player, but to me, Dan, when I think of athleticism in center field, or just the pound-for-pound rawness, like Luis Matos to me is probably the most athletic center fielder I can recall since perhaps, Angel Pagan or Andres Torres. Andres Torres was just a muscle hamster. Like, that guy was one of the strongest players.
He's half the size of Matos, though.
But that's what I'm saying, though, is he still swung a 38-inch bat with that weighed 40 pounds, it felt like. The guy was carrying a log to home plate from both sides. But that's the kind of, I guess, athleticism that's been lacking in center field that I can recall. And he provides juice out there. And the other part of it, too, is he's replacing a very good center fielder. Like Jung-Hoo Lee, I don't know, if he'd been able to play a full season, might have been in Gold Glove contention.
Sure.
He's a guy that is about as solid in center field as it comes. Luis Matos made a play yesterday out in left center field up against the wall that is going to get forgotten because of what Matt Chapman did to end the game, but was an unbelievable play to take double extra bases away from the Mets. And those plays have been a little more regular. For example, the leadoff home run, I think McCutchen hit in Game 3 in Pittsburgh, that ball was in his mitt before it squirted out. Like, this kid can eliminate base runners, can eliminate
He pulled that
runs.
back, too. That was
He
gone.
almost got it.
Yeah.
And Luis Matos it's not just what he does at the plate. It's also what he gives you in center field. And I'm not sure, I haven't even thought about the arm yet. And he's got that too. But just being able to put a guy out there every single day that you feel like can make a play that can take away a hit, can take away a base. And that's where the Giants defensively, if we're also just juxtaposing teams this year to last year. Last year was one of the worst defensive groups I've ever seen in my life. They could not get guys out. They were giving teams extra outs. And this year, it feels like there might be less than 3 outs per inning that other teams are working with because of Matos and because of Chapman specifically.
Yes.
And because of Patrick Bailey.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Patrick Bailey. Why don't we start there as well? He is becoming the new captain of this team. Like, he's a quiet leader. But when he's back behind the plate, there is a sense of stability that you just feel comfortable as a team. You feel comfortable as a defense and as a pitcher. It's good to have dad back home. There's just something about, and that's what, when you have a good catcher, that's the sort of X factor that he should be able to provide. And that's exactly what Patrick Bailey does when he's on this team. Patrick Bailey is a rising, legitimate star in this league. Should be an all-star this year. I put him right now in the National League as one of the top 5 catchers, and the guy's only 25 years of age and getting better. But when you think about Luis Matos, now listen, Jung-Hoo Lee and that shoulder injury, unfortunately, that's not to embellish or
it sucks.
It's bad, and not to get too theatrical, but he's really sort of at the crossroads of your career because Look, Freddie Sanchez never came back from that shoulder injury. When you have shoulder injuries, especially, now it's not to his throwing arm, but it's usually Cody Bellinger. It's like a 2-year recovery. Like, it's not this year, but it's the following year where there's this sense of, that they don't have the full sense of confidence of playing baseball at that level. And you could be looking 2 years without this guy. But look at it in a perfect scenario. Let's say Jung-Hoo Lee comes back. I think he's a better center fielder than Luis Matos.
Yeah.
But put Luis Matos in a corner. I'm done with Mike Yastrzemski to begin with. So, I mean, I'm good with him in a corner. And, the one thing that we could choke our motor a little bit here because Luis Matos, we don't want to overreact entirely because all of these kids, we need to see a little sustainability. Like, do it over at least, what do they say? You got to have at least 500 to 1,000 at-bats at the major league level before you really know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
So while we're excited, you just need to see this over time. But I think Luis Matos, don't forget, he got run last year, so it's not as though he hasn't been on the show before. But there's a lot, again, as far as the energy and the future of this team right now, as opposed to where we were a week ago. There's a lot to get behind. Yeah,
I have some questions about the sustainability of Matos at the top of the order. Like, I don't think he's a traditional leadoff guy.
What about Lamont Wade?
Well, Lamont's your best hitter, and you typically are putting your best hitter in the 2-hole.
But the on-base percentage is ridiculous as far as the walks.
It is, which is why he's setting the stage for the Solairs or for the Chapmans. And Chapman, to be honest, has been the guy that's really been the force behind this lineup. I mean, he had 3 home runs in Pittsburgh. He's been lighting it up. He's been hitting north of 500 or close to over the last 8 games, which they're 7-1. So it's not just his defense. When Matt Chapman doesn't hit, he's an average player because of how good the glove is.
Yeah.
When he's hitting it all, he is one of the best third basemen in the NL. Because if he's giving you anything in that category, especially the power, if he's being able to supply a home run here or there, he makes the Giants a very dangerous team because everything else can just fall in around him. And I know Solaire's come around and had a nice solo shot last night. But if he and Soler can figure it out, Chapman and Jorge is who I'm talking about here. If those guys can lock down the middle of the order, I don't think it necessarily matters where Wade is as far as 1 or 2. I would like to have him in the 2 spot because I think that's generally, again, where your best hitter should be. I think he is. But Matos is interesting because he's such a contact-heavy player and doesn't see a ton of pitches outside of, if he's making contact and foul pitches off. But really what I've been most impressed by is, like, the young guys have been great, and there's no doubt about that. I do think the sustainability is something we have to at least allow for them regressing a little bit. But if those veteran guys in the heart of your order, the Lamonts, the Chapmans, and the Solairs, are consistently showing up, well, I don't know about comebacks every other day or every day, but your offense looks a lot different. I think it also features the young guys.
Well, the one negative, I guess, coming out of last night's game is Kyle Harrison, who didn't look very good. And Kyle Harrison, who is cooled a little bit, but he's one of those pitchers that you're banking on when we talk about you like the staff. You want to see him remain that level of consistency that we saw in the beginning of the year. The one thing about him, and look, I don't want to sound like I know what the hell I'm talking about or I do this for a living, but when you just watch...
Well, we do it every Saturday.
Someone like Logan Webb, or you watch giant pitchers who traditionally keep the ball down, right? Like, that's sort of the mantra at the minor league level, right? Yeah. As it is for everybody. But Logan Webb is quintessential in terms of being able to perfect that. And he does this by, it's done by intent because he wants to overpower people, but he's up in the zone.
Yeah.
As opposed to a lot of the other pitchers. And just like anybody else, that if you miss a little bit and you're up, you're going to pay for it. And that's exactly what happened to him last night. So just doing the eyeball test and watching him pitch as opposed to some of the other pitchers on that staff, he likes to stay up in the zone. And it can cost him. And it's sort of a scary proposition going forward. Again, not to sound like I've been a bullpen catcher my whole life, but I just, some things jump out at you.
No, I think that's astute. And that's the one thing that jumps out to me about Harrison as well, is he's a guy who lives up in the zone. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And actually, over the course, I know, traditional pitching would tell you, keep the ball down, play towards the ground balls. But Kyle Harrison has elite ride on his fastball, so the ball just visibly jumps. And that's one of the reasons why he'll live up in the zone. The issue that I have with him is right now his command is not elite enough to overcome the lack of velocity. I mean, he can touch 95, but he's typically 92, 93. The velocity plays up because of that ride and rise in the zone. But the fastball right now is his pitch. And you saw last night, and you have seen over the course of time, he goes deep into counts. He doesn't get ahead as often as you like. And that's a characteristic of a young pitcher. But I think when you live up in the zone and you don't locate consistently enough, right now, you are going to run into these types of games. Now, I thought that, for example, like the pitch that JD Martinez sent to the Bronx, I thought that was a good pitch. Like he put 92 on the hands, right where Bailey wanted it. He spotted up. You just tip your cap to the hitter. What you can't have is not working from ahead. There's a lot of 2-0s, a lot of 2-1s, a lot of 3-1s, or at least more than I would like from Harrison. So I don't think you're wrong, Dan. Like he is a pitcher that is going to pitch up in the zone. I just think it's about honing in on that. Like that's his strength, and that is where he's going to have to live. So some of these games are going to happen where if you're fly ball happy, you are going to give up some home runs.
You know, another guy who lives up in the zone and is successful for the most part is Tyler Rogers, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy who's throwing from down under, and usually a guy who's an underhanded pitcher, you would think just by the physiology is going to keep the ball down. But he has that riser, and he's actually very successful. So, we'll see what happens with Kyle Harrison. I just want to get back to that last play to end the game. I'm trying to think if that might be the best defensive play I've seen to close out a baseball game. I mean, off the top of my head, I would say yes. But it wasn't just on Chapman's end. How about Lamont Wade?
Yeah.
You talk about onions. Lamont Wade with that stretch, because if he doesn't pick that clean, that's ball game.
No, that's true. Can we hear the call again, Ken? Because it was a masterful call by Dave Fleming on NBC Sports Bay Area.
3-2. The pitch. A little slow roller. Chapman. Bare hand. Got it! What a play!
Oh, look at him.
Chapman.
I mean, even Javi Lopez couldn't contain himself. That
Javi Lopez, did you hear what Javi Lopez? I knew you were in a bar. You probably had the audio down.
Yeah,
Javi Lopez? Did you hear this, Jersey Ken? He said he picked it like a booger.
Oh, that was pretty good.
Oh, that's
good. I've never heard that before. But anyways, the defense by that of Chapman, he did the same thing against Pittsburgh. Wow. Just simply wow. But again, let's not forget on the other end that Lamont Wade with that stretch, if you don't pick that, young fella, that's ball game.
Yeah.
So for him to go out, I think it was on both ends. Tip your hat to Chapman, but let's not forget the receiver, Lamont Wade, who made a hell of a play as well.
Well, no, that's why both Melvin and I think Chapman even fessed up to it too. And it's considering the situation. So, you talk about time and situation. We'll get into one in a little bit between Doncic and Gobert. Time and situation matters in all sporting events. And for Chapman to make that play in that position with not just the game tying run, but if he puts that ball in his back pocket, it's a tie game. You can keep moving. If he doesn't, he uncorks that baseball, and he knows it's going to be a low throw because he didn't have a great grip on it. He has full trust in his guy at first base to make that play. And for Lamont to scoop it out, to dig it out, you're right. If that ball gets by him, that game's over. That is as close to a walk-off home run on the defensive side of things as I've seen ever. And that's why, considering the situation, the spot, the degree of difficulty of that play, that is Matt Chapman's best play that I've ever seen him make, because that is a literal game-winning play. That is a step-back walk-off J. That is a walk-off home run. That is a PK goal to win it all. That is a do-or-die play for Matt Chapman.
Subban, shout out. Thank you.
And he was able to make it along with Lamont Wade. That was fantastic. Everyone in the bar that I was at turned their heads and started clapping. He got a standing ovation, and we couldn't even hear that miraculous call.
And coming from Evan Giddings, who knows a thing or two, not only about baseball, which is really sort of, where you live, but also a guy that is familiar with Matt Chapman and that of his days with the Oakland A's. That is a huge, huge statement on your end. I think that Lamont Wade, again, was just as big. Not as the play, certainly belongs to Matt Chapman in terms of the athleticism and the arm strength and just going for it, everything you just laid out. But again, Lamont Wade's pick, and not to mention, Lamont Wade bailed out Thairo Estrada like 2 hitters before.
Yeah.
I mean, Thairo Estrada tried to throw one away, right?
Yeah, and a diving play.
Yeah, and so a great play again on the part of Lamont Wade. I think it's all systems go with the same. I know we're getting into the Giants a little bit overreaction today, but I love looking at this baseball team, and I love seeing athletes on this team. I love just looking at the way Matos and Estrada fill out a uniform. And we'll get into your guy, Luciano. We'll keep teasing Luciano because as much as we talk about how important defense is, which is why, again, you cannot have a shortstop who simply cannot handle a routine ground ball.
Well, speaking of overreactions, I think Marco Luciano has been the poster boy for that as of late. And we're going to talk about him on the other side because this Giants team, and I want to hear from you at 888-957-9570. This is Saturdays with Evan Giddings and Dan Devone. I mean, it is a day to overreact in a way because we haven't had anything positive, I think, up until this last 10-game stretch to overreact to. They were 6 games below 500 after the Dodgers series, or in the midst of the Dodgers series. They are now at 500. They're 26-26. They have won 3 in a row. For the first time in franchise history, they come from behind, down 4-3 successive days to Pittsburgh and now New York. They play again later today, and I can't wait to see what they might do this afternoon in Queens. But coming up on the other side, we will hone in. We've gone through Matos. We haven't got to Ramos yet, but we've also talked about Harrison and Bailey. I want to get to Marco Luciano because I have some thoughts about the kid. Leave him alone, Dan Devone.
We'll
get to that on the other side. We come back. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone with you on 95.